Hello and welcome to another my indie marriage video. I wanted to talk about where we are now. So we celebrated our 25th anniversary a couple months back, and by celebrated I mean we did absolutely nothing because that's how we roll. But we've made it to 25 years, so kind of miraculous, especially when I think of all of the things that we have been through. So many hardships. Yes. So probably about 5 years ago, he had insulted me, and it was just one insult too many. You know, as they say, the straw that broke the camel's back. I just kind of died inside. There was just like this moment of, like, if I actually had like a physical heart that I was holding and it went like, it just felt that real, that significant. And I was different after that. I had just started to back right off. I had a moment of thinking, I really don't like you very much. This thing that you do where you just have your silly little stabs, and he's not one to call me a bitch or a mole or things like that. He's not direct like that. He doesn't say you're ugly or you're fat. He'll say, I thought you'd be jealous of her because she's prettier than you, or my friends are noticing you're gaining weight. So his statements are roundabout. But every now and then he'll come up to me and say something like, do you honestly think you do a good enough job with housework? You're not as good as you think you are with regards to cooking and cleaning. So he'll say things like that. So they're not direct attacks, you know, it's more subtle. And so he did this time, you know, you're not as good as that thing that you love doing. And I was crushed because I love doing it, and here he is telling me I'm crap at it. And so I just kind of died a little bit inside and went really distant. I used to hold him when he drove. So I'd sort of reach over, hold a hand on a knee, something. And for all you Americans, you're wondering why I'm leaning that way. Yeah, he's on that side in Australia. And I stopped doing that. I used to sit with him when he watched TV and kind of lean over. Stopped doing that. I used to flirt and be playful, pinch his bottom, stuff like that. I stopped doing that. When I watched TV, I started building this tower of cushions next to me so he couldn't sit near me. I started sleeping with a bolster down the middle of the bed so he couldn't snuggle up next to me. Not that he's big at snuggling, but I didn't want him touching me at all. I stopped seeking him out for conversation. If I had an idea, I'd think, oh, I'll go and share that with hubby. And then I'd be like, what's the point? He's not listening anyway, who cares? So I stopped doing that. I stopped going to hang with his family and friends. Mainly because I hated being fake around them. I hated pretending that we were going well, that we had a good marriage, that I was happy. And I mean, granted, I don't know if I was especially good at pretending to be happy. Some people had noticed that I wasn't, so maybe they're just very perceptive. But either way, I got to a point where I hated even pretending that we were getting along and he was wonderful. A lot of people are like, oh, your husband is so nice. And I go, which is my way of saying no, but I'm not going to tell you no. But if you didn't know me, you'd think I was agreeing with you. Oh yeah, look, she's saying, that means yes. And so I got to a point where I just didn't want to do anything with him. I started having social gatherings when he wasn't home. If he invited me somewhere, I didn't go. I really just kind of backed off. I'd just gotten to, I suppose, breaking point. I stopped showering with him. I stopped getting changed or showering or anything when he was home. I would wait until he'd gone out or was busy. So essentially I kind of just started acting like I was a housemate instead of his partner. I started taking less phone calls from him and just sometimes just letting the phone ring out. So he used to call and I used to always pick up, and it just got to a point where I was kind of answering every third phone call. And I stopped saying I love you. After he did that kind of insult, I was just, I don't know, I guess it felt like a lie to say that. Because I was feeling like I like him as a person and I love him as a human being the way that I don't wish any harm on any other humans. But I didn't feel in love with him anymore. I didn't feel like I loved this guy. He was far too volatile and too insensitive, and just, even though they're not direct insults, he was still insulting me and putting me down, critiquing, fault finding. And I just started to find that really unendearing, and I didn't love that about him. So I stopped saying I love you. We also found out that our son was on the spectrum, and therefore it was most likely hubby was on the spectrum. And when I found that out, my mind went quiet. I started to realize that the things that I was requesting, the needs that I wanted him to meet and things like this, couldn't be done. And so again, I backed off. I started to realize there's no real point in me going up to him and saying, I wish we communicated more. It was probably never going to happen, especially not in the depth or the way that I desired. And so once I knew that he was on the spectrum and I knew there was a whole range of needs that he would never be able to meet, I stopped expecting them. I also stopped desperately trying to meet as many needs of his as I could, which is what I had been doing. I was trying to bend myself into the shape that he wanted me to be in so that he would be nicer and respectful and love me more and that kind of thing. And I'd realised that it wasn't working, but now I knew why it wasn't working. And so I stopped trying to be everything and only focused on the things that I could be, as well as accepting that he couldn't be everything I needed, and just focused on the things that he could do. So for example, he's not flirty and, sort of whispering sweet nothings in my ear or doing pillow talk and by pillow talk I don't even mean before or after sex. Just lying in bed and talking is not something that he's ever done, but I've always liked that. I've always liked the idea of sitting in bed, eating croissants and drinking coffee and just having, general chit chat. But he's action man. Once he's up, he likes to get up and be up and doing stuff. And I'd always wished that he would be that kind of man, and he never was. And so I just let it go. I just started to realise, well, that's not something that he can do. But if I say to him, oh, I really feel like some wine tonight and we don't have any left, he'll go up the street and buy a bottle. Or if it's that time of the month and I'm craving chocolate, I'll say, oh, I really need a cherry ripe, and he'll go up the street and get a cherry ripe. So I started to sort of focus on the things that he could do and started to not stress about the things that he couldn't do. And I started researching, obviously, what his condition was and what it meant, and learning about the things that he would not be able to do. And that just kind of took the pressure off him and stopped leaving me feeling as bitter, I suppose, as resentful. And that's why I focused things on things like the anger. I knew that he could do those things, and I was determined that he be the best person that he could be. I did not accept his things of this is normal and every man does this. I knew that wasn't the case, and I wanted better. All right, you're not going to do pillow talk, fine, but don't do anger, So I guess fundamentally I started treating him as neutral as he treats me. He treats me like a housemate. Granted, one that, lies next to him in bed and hopefully he's going to get some action from. Friends with benefits. But for the most part, he treats me like a housemate. And I just started doing that back. You know, if you're not flirty, I'm not going to be flirty. And I wasn't doing it in this bitter, I'm going to revenge you kind of way. It was just more matter of fact, a necessity. I was giving too much of myself and not receiving as much back. And I started to realize that I just needed to stop that. I just needed to stop trying to be everything and just be the few things that I could do well, be them. And in the last so many years, he's actually made some friends. And I know that sounds really crazy as I say that, because unless you're on the spectrum or you know somebody on the spectrum, you wouldn't even understand that statement. He's had friends before, but they've never been close. He's never talked to them about things, or not in any kind of real depth. And he started to seek people's advice and talk to them and get feedback and things. And also go out and socialize. And this has just helped somehow. He's just more, I don't know, like it's during this time that he said, you know, I realize that I've been bullying you into doing everything my way. So I don't know what they said or if they said anything that made him come up with that realization. But I have personally found that him making friends is helping. It's helping him not be so ignorant and naive and understand that all relationships have complexities. Because one of the biggest things that we found happened a lot was he didn't understand that all relationships were difficult. And he did focus a lot on the negative, which is really ironic considering I'm making these videos and it probably seems that that's exactly what I'm doing. But he was constantly saying things like, this relationship is terrible, it's a roller coaster ride, we should split up, I can't meet your needs, blah, 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 blah. Whereas I was trying to focus on the positives of the relationship. And he was doing the opposite. And he started to be different once he started to make friends. I think because he started to realise that they have complications as well, and they still like their partners. So I feel like that helped. I feel that friendships have been a good thing for him. Also, during the last few years, I think that things that have been said by me and the counsellors are starting to sink in. So he's starting to sort of think about things more now. And he'll quote the things that have been said, and he'll tell his friends that one of the counsellors said, if I want something done, I should do it myself, so I am. So I think that just over years and time and me repeating myself and saying the same things over and over again, it's just started to sink in. Because for a long time he didn't believe me when I said, look, you have to be nice to me or else I'm going to become really distant and not like you anymore. Well, how could I predict the future and know that? That's crazy. But alas, it turned out that that's exactly what happened. And so I think just over the years, he's just started to put two and two together. And even though I hear a lot of people say they can't change, you can't educate them, they don't get it, I'm finding that that isn't the case. They can and they do. It just takes an exceptionally long time. But they do get there in the end, especially if they really want to be a good partner. That definitely helps. And so these days we really just are more like housemates and good friends. We'll go out and have lunch together, have a coffee, go and watch a movie now and again, watch TV together, and we don't necessarily talk, but we might chat a little bit here and there during the movies. So we've just gotten, I don't know, just nicer dealing with each other. And a funny thing about watching the movies, I don't know if I've said this in a previous video or not, but if something happens during a movie and I don't understand it, I'll pause the movie to ask a question. And he'd groan, he'd always be like, oh, like this. Anyway, it started to get to a point where he would start talking during a movie, so I would pause the TV. And then he's starting to realise, oh, I talk too. I just don't pause. Whereas I'll pause because I don't want to miss what's being said or something. And so it got to a point where he would start talking, and then because he knew he was going to start talking, he would then start pausing the TV. And I started jokingly groaning like him, you know. But I'd make it really dramatic. Arms flailing, falling off the couch, carrying on like a two-bob, and we'd both have a laugh about it. So I have definitely started to inject a lot of humour into the relationship. So for example, even today he was watching a video on how to fix something, and the guy says something about how he had to talk down on his drill thing to get it to be the required torque. And I jokingly say, oh, I can talk down too, you know, meaning talk, T-L-A-T-A-L-K. And he chuckles about that. Or somebody will say something like, you can't touch that, and I'll go, can't touch it, do, you know, so I'll turn everything into a joke or a song. Even my son said to me the other day, it's amazing how many lyrics you know. Music was always my thing. If I was on the spectrum, music would have been my special interest. So we insert a lot of sort of friendly humour and friendly banter and things like this into the relationship. And what I found, which is really fascinating, is within the last couple of years, he has started reaching out and coming to me. And he's the one now coming up to me and doing a little bit of flirting, which bowled me over with a feather. Wow. You know, and look, it's a bit sad because I feel like it's a little bit too late. Like, we've had 24 years of him not doing this stuff, and now he's suddenly starting to do this stuff. It's nice that he's doing this stuff, but it doesn't have the same effect on me as it would have if he'd been flirting with me when I was in my 20s. It would have just made me feel better and feel nicer. But still, he's trying now. He's making efforts. He's starting to seek me out. He's starting to talk. He's starting to lean on me when we watch TV, which, again, bowled me over with that feather. He's starting to come up to me and say, do you want a cup of tea? Would you like a glass of wine? I'm going to the street. Would you need anything? So it's really interesting that my radical acceptance of his condition and what I can expect, and me stopping all of the, for a lack of a better term, needy things that I was doing, it's changed things. And I feel like that's because I'm no longer putting these massive expectations onto him, so he probably feels calmer within himself. He doesn't have this person who's all like he said to me, I'm clingy and I'm naggy and I'm annoying. Now, as much as those are annoying things to hear, I have to stop and think about the feelings behind what it is that he's saying. And even though I've never been a nag, and I'm not clingy, though I'm probably definitely annoying, we all have our foibles, I have to think, what is it that's behind that, and what can I do to make that better for him? And I was always like that right from the start, listening to everything he said and trying to adapt. But I find that now that I'm not seeking him out as much, I'm not sort of, requiring as much of him as I used to, he has started seeking me out. And I think that that's just because he feels less stressed. And if you're on the spectrum, what do you think? Do you think that it would be that? Do you think that my being more sort of friendly roommate as opposed to lover with high expectations would quieten his mind, would make him feel less put upon? Let me know your thoughts. Love to hear from you. And so I did stop stonewalling after we saw Counsellor Terry, and she told me that was what I was doing. So I stopped sort of being as distant. I will go to the odd gathering here or there, but still not the way that I used to. I guess we've just kind of randomly turned into friends, which If you'd have asked me 3 years in, 5 years in, 7 years in, during that 15-year housework saga battle, I would never have imagined we would get to where we are now, to be honest. There were moments where we really hated each other. And I suppose it's like that saying says, we didn't hate each other at the same time, so we never split up. Well, that's not true. We split up 5 times maybe over the course of 24 years. So we've definitely had big dramas. But we have gone from me feeling really depressed when we first met, him hardly talking to me, to me just accepting that he is who he is. He has these conditions, he has these requirements. He's never going to be Mr. Don Juan, warm, friendly, all up in my face, kissy, kissy, smoochy, smoochy. You know, it is what it is. But I have to learn to accept him for how he is and love him for who he is. He shouldn't be penalised because he has a condition. If he was in a wheelchair or blind, would I be saying, you don't deserve love? So I feel that way about this condition. Just because he has Asperger's, he's on the spectrum, it doesn't mean that he is not deserving of having a loving relationship with his wife and children. So that's the long and the short of where we are now. If any of this resonates with you, feel free to drop a comment below. I always love to hear from you. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really do appreciate it.